I definitely have enough here to replace these crappy parts with equally crappy parts. Well, is that the coolest headstock you ever seen on the tip of a Johnson or what? Anyway, I was pretty excited when I was given this guitar to go through until I felt the back of the neck. It appears the truss rod inlay is popping out of its home. So in this video we're going to try to figure out what caused that and if it's fixable. And what's a better way to experiment than on a cheap ass guitar. So let's get a closer look at what's going on here. Alright, so we're looking closely at the back of the neck, and you can see this inlay on this side is raised. It's pretty much split all the way up to about here. Now my first thought was that maybe the truss rod itself was like over tightened and that caused that. But if we come here to the face of the guitar, look at all this rust. I'm wondering if this got some moisture in there and the rust just expanded on the truss rod and popped that whole thing out. So I think I want to figure out if we can fix that. I guess the first thing to do is to start tearing it down. Let's plug it in and see if the pickups work first. Alright, so it's rusted to hell. The pickups don't work. The neck has a split in it. So, at the very least, let's try to diagnose what happened. See if we can get it to work again. A little forensics. Try that, huh? This thing is just covered in rust. My suspicions are that moisture got down into that truss rod. And maybe the rust expanded and popped out that inlay. We'll see. Well, here it is broken down. The neck is in even worse shape than I initially thought. I also discovered that not only is it splitting up the back, it's also splitting away from the fretboard down here by the heel. So that's a shame. The appealing part of this guitar was that Ibanez headstock. I'll still tear into it to see what went wrong with it, but there are some positives. All the chrome parts are still pretty decent. The body is solid. It's not cheap plywood. The finish looks pretty good on it. Nice looking burst. I don't see any disconnected wires on the electronics. but I do see a ton of oxidation everywhere. The pickup covers are pretty much stuck on there. They feel kind of bulged, so I don't know if there's any hope for those. Now, I never throw anything out, and I'm trying to pare down my hoard a bit. And I have this neck here from a different build. It's from a Mark guitar, and I'm no Mark unless it's wrestling, but I think this headstock is bogus. I don't know. It's very limp, to put it nicely. What if I reshape this headstock, sand it off the finish, and this neck will directly swap in there, you know? There you go. I only need to get the electronics working. Again, going back to my Strat hoard, I definitely have enough here to replace these crappy parts with equally crappy parts. And I'm already making a video, so let's make something new. Or newish. Alright, proceeding. My first thought was to pull out this inlay, but what I think I want to do is to try to pull the fretboard off. So I have a heating pad here that gets just way too hot when you put it on your back, and it works perfect for this type of stuff. I'm going to wrap this up in here. I'll turn it on, let it sit for, I don't know, an hour or so. See if we can soften up that glue a little more and get that to come right off of there. Let's look at a towel here. I'm going to wrap it in a towel too. Try to insulate it a little bit. I think just like that, I'm going to put it on high. Let it sit for an hour and see if we can peel that fretboard off or maybe pull the inlay out. I think my heating pad is losing its mojo. I couldn't get it to split off cleanly. I did try soaking in some of this stuff to no effect, so I just went in with brute force. It was going in the trash anyway, but you can see, as I suspected, the truss rod rusted up and expanded all the wood behind it. That's too bad, because I really dug that headstock. So let's put this old neck behind us, work on the new neck. I want to start by sanding off the finish, so taking off the hardware will be my first step. And I'll tape off the fretboard, leave it as is, so proceeding. Well, I got the finish sanded off the neck, with the exception of the tip, because I'm chopping it off. I want to make the headstock a little less limp looking, so I came up with 3 options. Use your imagination here. First one is kind of giving a curve right here. You know, that works. My second option was to kind of give a curve right here. And I'll put 2 tuners on this side. That would work too. Third option is to give a curve right here, right up around there. Same thing with the 2 tuners. Either one. So I put out a poll to my bros, and the consensus with them is cutting it down here. So that'll put the 2 tuners on that side, but that should be just fine. Kind of resembles like a BC Rich morphed with a Schecter. Anyway, I'm going to mark it, chop it, sand it. I'll add the 2 new tuner holes. I'll fill in any unnecessary screw holes. Give it a nice seal, and it should be good to go. So let's do it. Well, I that up. I've learned that my new oscillating spindle sander is very aggressive. Now the curve is fine, but I went too deep, and now it's kind of too close to that G tuner hole. So I took a step back, decided to pivot. I did some brainstorming, came up with some options. So instead of having two garbage necks, I thought, could I graft this headstock onto this one? That puts it back to the Ibanez shape I liked, and I've never done anything like that, but it's a skill I could gain, level up. I realize this is a lot of work for a worthless guitar, but I'm still learning, and this is a perfect subject. However, lining up these last two holes, however I cut it, might prove difficult. If they're not in line or the spacing is off, it kind of would be noticeable. So now I'm thinking, could I just graft a new piece of wood on there entirely and cut the shape into whatever I want? So I'm going to go that route. So my plan is to cut this straight at an angle so I have a lot of gluing surface somewhere in front of the G tuner down here to this point where it turns back up. Now the correct way to probably do this is like a tongue and groove, but I don't have the tools to pull that off. I do have a biscuit cutter and some strong glue. That should add a bit of strength. Also, it's only going to be supporting the B and the E, not the heavier gauge strings down here. So let's see how this works. Well, I got my piece of scrap wood here, cut down to an angle. Did the same thing on the remaining headstock. Cut my biscuit holes, just kind of dry fitting them together, make sure they line up. Got a nice tight joint there. So I'll glue that up. Once that's glued up, I can start sanding it down and cut out the shape I'm going to do. And I'm going to go with a standard Fender headstock because that's what's going to look right on this guitar. Ibanez headstock, one of my favorites, probably top 5, but it doesn't look right on a Strat. Looks good on a Super Strat, but not really a Strat. So I'm going to go with this shape here. I think that's going to make a huge improvement. So let's get to it. All right, here's where I'm at. With the exception of the mismatched wood color, it came out perfectly. That joint is tighter than a new jar of pickles. Like, you can't even feel it with your fingers at all. It's really nice. I'm going to give it a light sanding by hand, and I'm going to seal it up with some of this aqua coat and add a decal. Then I can move on to that body. Sound good? Well, that looks great, feels good. Even got a decal so you know who did it. I'm going to name it Rusty Johnson. Now on to these electronics. When I first plugged this in, I had nothing coming out at all. And my assumption is that the pots of the jack hole are just so oxidized I'm not getting a complete connection, or something is shorted out along the path. On first inspection, I see no disconnected wires, but I do see a lot of rust and crust on the pots. So I'm going to start testing from the pickups back, and I want to show you 2 ways to test if your pickups are working or if they're just screwed. The first method, we'll use a multimeter. If you don't have one of those, I'll show you another way using only 2 wires. Okay, for my first method, I'm going to use my multimeter to check the resistance on the pickups. I'm going to take my black lead, I'm going to connect it to a ground, which should just be the top of the pot. I'm going to turn my multimeter to the horseshoe mode, 20K, and I'll take the red probe, and I'm going to start probing the wires that go to the pickups. I know this first one here is my bridge, and that reads out at, you can see it, 8.66. The middle pickup goes at 4.26, and the neck is 4.26 as well. So I've confirmed that those pickups work. There's something else down here that's not working. Let's try an alternate method. If you don't have a multimeter, if you have some test leads, you can do this. Or if you don't have test leads, you can just, use some wire. So the first thing we're going to do is connect a wire or a lead from a ground to the ground on your guitar lead, which is just the longer part, the jacket there. we're going to take our second alligator clip, or if you have a wire, just tape it on there. And I'm going to clip this to, we'll start with the bridge pickup. How about that? We're just going to turn our amp on. And I don't need any of this down here to tell that that works. Let's move up to the middle pickup. Yep. And then the neck pickup. Yep, they all work. So our problem is obviously beyond that. So let's test them from back here at the jack. We'll do the same thing. Actually, I might not need that for this. Let's see. Put it on the 20K horseshoe. See what we get here. Yeah, I'm getting resistance on that, but let's see if I went from the jacket to the tip. Yep, see, it just drops out. So it's either this jack is bad or it's just so corroded. And looking down in there, there's a ton of oxidation, so I don't know if we're getting a connection on that at all. Let's try one thing. Take some rolled up sandpaper right in that jack hole. Sand to the inside of that, hopefully get back to some shininess. I get a whole bag of jacks, so I'm just going to probably replace it anyway, but we'll just see if this is our issue. Need some stronger sandpaper. That, and then on the tip a little bit where it touches, just plug it in and see if that made any difference. And that's working now. It's working. It's pretty quiet too. So that's what our problem was. Not working, was the jack. It was just crusty. Alright, so we know all that's working. I'm going to spray all this down with deoxit as much as I can. I'm just going to work it. I might have to do this twice because these are so crusty. And don't forget about your switch. And I'm just going to replace that just so I know it's done correctly. While I'm waiting for that deoxit to soak in there, I want to do something about this bridge. Let it sit while I'm doing other things. So I'm going to use some peanut butter blaster penetrant. And I'm just going to spray the thing down and let it sit in the corner for a while. Now while that's soaking in there, there are a couple other things I need to do, aside from replacing the jack. I do need to route for this humbucker that I'm going to put in there because the body's not routed for it. The guy that gave me this guitar, I worked on a guitar for him last year. It was a Squire Strat, and we changed out the humbucker. And I just so happened to have the humbucker here that we changed out. So it's kind of neat. It'll be going back to him, just in a different guitar. Well, that works just fine. Well, I've got the new jack and the humbucker installed, and I need to mount this pick guard. But I want to install the bridge first, because I may need to take a little bit off the pick guard, so it'll help to have the bridge in its final position. I also might need to trim a little bit off up here at the neck pocket. Off camera, I soaked all the rusty parts in vinegar. Everything on the bridge came out just fine. Only needed to replace one Allen screw down in the saddle. Also rubbed all the shiny parts with some chrome polish. It came out perfect. And I think I should probably clean up this body though before I go mount anything on it. So let's do that. I hand chiseled out for that humbucker and it came out perfect. So another new skill acquired. I think I'm going to go heavy duty on this. We're going to go with the Spray Away All-Purpose Cleaner. Right on there. It's got some vinegar in it too. Any rust. Right onto the neck though, right? Do a little bit better job on the back once I get the front assembled. A little spray wax. Alright, much better. Just wanted to get them close with the drill. Now the trick is not to screw them in too tight. I'm going to bring the pick guard in and see where it sits, and I can start lining up some of the old holes. Like this one here, and maybe not. But I think right about there will sit nice. I just got to take a little bit off the edge here, but I'll wait till that's mounted to do that. Alright, you can start assembling this. You just needed to drill out those little holes that hold the peg on the pot, keep it from spinning. Let's see if that's any better. Right there, get in your hole. It's always the 10mm socket, isn't it? Gonna make sure all this works before I button it back up. So this one here lines up. I'm going to put a screw right on in there to lock it down. And that lines up nicely with the bridge down there. It looks like this one might line up too. Yep, I'm just reusing all the old rusty screws. Goes with the theme, Rusty Johnson. A lot of these holes kind of lined up. It's tough to see, but yeah. I have absolute butterfingers tonight. Well, here's the true test. Putting some tension on my new joint here. Feels completely solid and like smooth. You don't even feel the seam there at all. There it is, the Rusty Johnson. That was way too much work to do on a worthless guitar, but hey, I gained a couple new skills. I learned that I can add wood to a headstock and reshape it. I also hand chiseled out the humbucker cavity. Looks factory. And I really find doing these types of guitar builds and fixes relaxing, and there's no pressure if the guitar is not an expensive one, right? I had these yellowed knobs in my Strat stash. The ones that came with this were pretty white, and these ones kind of match the humbucker better. The secondhand pickguard and humbucker worked out perfectly, and actually came from the same dude that this Johnson came from, so he'll be stoked to get a new ride. And aside from my labor, I'm only into it for the price of new strings, and I use generic ones at that. So get out there and fix something. I want to thank you for joining me. Give me a thumbs up for filming it for you, and we'll talk again soon.